Bless our friend Sukhsimran as he shares his story, and may each of us gain hope and joy through this time we spend together. Amen. So now I turn it over to you, Sukhsimran.
Greetings, everyone. I was not told that Dean Paul Caron will be here, so I'm a little nervous now. Thank you all for being here. I really thank Sara Barton, a dear colleague and a leader in our university, for such a gracious invite and the kind words. And she's always been one of the amazing friends I have here on campus, and what brings me to a campus like Pepperdine, where I stand out. In fact, I'm used to standing out. This is my story. I grew up in a small town named Khanna in India, in a state of Punjab. Pan means 5, Jab means water, a land surrounded by 5 rivers or 5 waters. Unfortunately, that's not true today because of droughts, because of the division of India and Pakistan, and because of what happened during partition. So I grew up in divided lands. I grew up with when lands where identity was part of the soil, where you grew up hearing stories. You are this, they are this. And these are the stories of Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, and a few other minorities if they happen to be around. But primarily it was Sikh, Hindus, and Muslims. Now I grew up observing people, places, and things. I observed since I liked observation, but also since at times I didn't have a choice but to observe. From the comments people made about other faiths, about themselves, about me, and for what observation is worth, it teaches you a lot. Like Yogi Berry says, you can learn a lot through observation. So at times, even though I wanted to add to the dialogue, I couldn't. I grew up in an average household. My father was a law professor for 40 plus years, then became president of one university. He is still officially serving as a president of another university, though I've pushed him to come live with us due to COVID-19, and he gracefully agreed. And I pray and I hope that agreement lasts for at least a few months, if not years. I grew up with 2 distinct identities, my friends. I grew up as a Sikh man, starting wearing my turban at the age of 16. Sikh men are supposed to cover their head when they start growing their beard, which comes at 14, 15, 16, 17, whatever the age is. For me, it was 16 when I had this beautiful beard coming along. Sorry, I added the word beautiful in there. So I was told to start wearing a turban. I put on a turban, went to school. The next day, as you can imagine, just still in middle school or high school, came back home very disturbed, and I said, Dad, this is too hard. Why? It's too heavy. Why is it heavy? My ears are hurting. They press my ears too hard. He said, what's the next one? Well, they're red. Next. Well, it's funny. Next. People look at me differently. Next. I quickly learned he was not buying any of those. It looked like he went through all of the above. He held my hands, I remember vividly, held me by my shoulders, came up to me, and he was wearing his magnificent turban that day. I was wearing my not so good looking turban that day. Today, you look at me, it is of course magnificent. And he held me and he looked at me and he said, he calls me Sukh as my nickname. I want you to know one thing. I said, what's that? Just wear it. It'll bring you a lot in life. It'll teach you a lot in life. It makes you struggle a lot in life. It makes you stand out a lot in life. But you will thank me one day. Oh, folks, I truly agree with my father. I thank him for giving me that piece of wood when I was 16 years old in Khanna, Punjab, India. That's my identity 1. Let's come back to that identity. My second identity became an identity of a stutterer. I went to my school. We We don't have elementary school, middle school, and high school in India. We have one school from nursery, from first grade to 12th grade is one. So I had to think there. And I remember in 6th grade, a teacher asked me to read a paragraph from a book. In fact, I went back to my notes. I love to take notes about life generally, so wanted to make sure that was 6th grade. And I remember her name, but I won't call out because it's not the complimentary story to her. And she was very strict teacher is what we remember. And she was asking us to read, and I opened up the book and I tried to read. I got stuck on the second word, third word, and I just couldn't finish a sentence, forget about the whole paragraph. And you know what she said? Quote unquote. It is so vivid in my brain. I can still picture her saying it. She said, people like him are no good to society. That was her words. He's going to bring failure to his family and to us. These were words, but they're so deeply imprinted in my heart, I can't remove them. I've tried. Almost like they push me every morning at 4 or 5 whenever I wake up. Fight. Sukhsimran, get up and fight. Prove her wrong. Those voices are still so loud that has come to a point where the fight has become so much that at times I have to just calm my mind down and say, okay, today you can give 2 talks, not 5, and you'll be fine. This week, this is one of my 7 talks. You can see I'm fighting. I'm going to continue fighting. So a Sikh and a stutterer. What do I learn? A couple of things more to share. I wanted out. I want to be honest with you and vulnerable with you all. I wanted out so badly from both identities. One day I took my turban off. I came home and I told Dad, 3 of my classmates got a haircut, and they look so good. And girls talk to them, and your son, and he gave me one look and I looked away. That was my father and that's my father. That was his answer to me. So I went back, cried some days, kept it on. In 11th grade, a friend of mine came to me, my good friend, and said, you know what my father told me? This is Punjab, India, to remind you. He said, people with turban are terrorists. That was the first time somebody called me terrorist. One of about a dozen times I've heard so far. But the first time when a child is in 11th grade, somebody comes to you and tells you, people with turban are terrorists. That also stays with you. And a good friend of yours says, that's what his father, anesthesiologist, big shot doctor in our town, said that to his son. Be careful of him. So I was learning, not only I have one problem, which is to overcome this speech impediment, I have another problem to convince people that I'm a good guy. and I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it. People judge you. I mediate when I do. The very first 5 minutes I have to spend is telling them who I am. Because the first judgment is, where the heck this guy came from? Can he speak? Can he speak English? And it becomes part of you. I was in Minnesota State Fair and a young woman comes up to me and she says, are you connected to bin Laden? This is not the proudest day of my life because I look back at her and I say, if I was, this place will not be the same. And I went home and I really thought about what did I tell her? Now she really thinks I am. This was 2008, a couple of years into American life. And not the first time somebody comes up to you and says something to you or questions you or gives you that look while you're walking or change the path while you're walking up in a pathway. It happens. Those of us who look like this, Muslim sisters of ours, Jewish friends and brothers and sisters who wear Hanukkah, I'm not alone. I'm just one of them, right? I'm one of the people who look different. Black men and women, we know what it means. And nowadays, a new stereotype of white men, right? Who are these white men? So whoever we are, we know what it means. And I am, I think, a representation of those identities when I faced what I faced. When I went low, friends, I looked for one thing. I looked for help, like most people do. And I was fortunate. I had 2 big helps. My parents were always there. I'm going to tell you something about my mother now. My mother gave us so much time when we were growing up. I was not so good in physics. I was the best student in class in mathematics. So one day I barely passed a physics exam, came home, told my mom, and she looked at me, she goes, let's have lunch first. And that comfort only a mother can give you. Even today, if I call her, she's right now visiting my sister, about to come back this weekend to us. The very first word I tell her, hello, she can tell me how I'm doing. And if my hello is not good, she'll say, is everything okay? I bring it up for one reason, for make you think about my story, but also share something deeply personal. I am who I am because of my fights, upbringing, professional competence, all the above. Let me call it fancy stuff. The real thing is because of my mom. The time she gave me when I was growing up, the comfort she gave me, the hugs she gave me, built me up. It's very powerful. It is what I look forward to when I'm down.
What?
When I was in law school, a bunch of students were doing a presentation, about 50 students, let's say 60, in a large classroom. That was my first presentation. It was one a year, if you may. Presentation on history and law. I knew what was coming. I went up to the podium. I looked at everybody and I started reading from my script. I somehow read my one paragraph, second paragraph I couldn't. And I heard loud laugh, very loud. But I saw 2 or 3 students who were in the front row. They didn't laugh, they looked at me and they kept looking at me very seriously. In the break, I went to them or they came to me. I don't remember exactly, but we talked. And they said, very good try. I learned that day that there are people who are going to question you, but there will always be people who will find that strength in you and remind you of who you are and the strength that you have. Believe in those people. Those are the people, a few friends is all I needed. Remember, if you are in a well, imagine with me you are in a well, a dark well, and you want to be pulled out of the well. You need 2 things. Either you need a rope or you need a hand. You don't need 100 hands. You only need 1 or 2 hands. Those are the hands that will help you, that help me. So I called my father afterwards, coming to my father, and he said, you will get there, don't worry. It was for his first presentation. I know how strong you are. This will be just fine. He had this wonderful way of uplifting you. In fact, I have seen him help people literally come out of depression. He's not a medical doctor or anything, but he's worked with one of our relatives who went into depression a few years ago. And I saw just my dad talk to this gentleman. And my dad uplifted him like anything. And he's worked with him for days till this guy came out. So I'm fortunate. I have a wonderful family. I have people who help me. Let me conclude where I want to go with this. Understanding. From the 2 identities I have, Sikh and a stutterer, I came to this one word that I want to share with you besides observation, and that is the power of understanding. It pushed me look deep into my side. For example, friends, what I pushed me is to look inside why people laugh, why I stutter, what makes me difficult or different. How can I accommodate my identity into my faith, into the new lives, the lives I've lived in India and the lives I've lived here? What do I do to tell people I'm okay? I'm not a threat. Is it people's fault that they look at me that way? And I've come to such a deep understanding, if I may use that word, where now I don't even question people. If somebody laughs or somebody questions, somebody's fearful, I have an understanding that it's not their fault. They may have grown up in a family where they never know that a person with turban can also have a family, can also have a daughter who he can lift up in the plane, also have a child who he can open to changing the diapers for. And he's not a man who's going to be a control freak at home just because he has a beard. Coming to that understanding takes time. Letting go of that fear takes time. Understanding society takes time. But to come to that understanding, you have to remove one thing, and I did, and that is doubt, self-doubt, and doubting people around you. Unfortunately, the byproduct of difficulty in life is doubt, doubting people, doubting this is wrong. So the first understanding I got from my first identity, or let's say a difficult identity when I was growing up, the stuttering identity, was power structure. I looked deep inside and I learned whenever I have power present, I stutter. So when it comes to my father, I stuttered. Mother, I did not. When I went to classroom, I started because of people, power. So I started looking, I started thinking. There was no Google at that time, but I started asking people, and somebody suggested along the way one tip that I want to share with you all, because you can help someone change their life with this tip. And the tip was very interesting. The tip is, the power is in your mind. It's relative. It's nowhere else exists. So the moment you think that you are the one who can control the narrative, you are the one who has the story, you are the one who shares the story, others are listening, you have the power. Well, it takes months and years to practice it, to put it in your mind. But that was a beautiful hint a teacher gave me through my father. In terms of Sikh identity, I'm wearing Pepperdine colors. It's blue in there. It's called 50. And you can see the Pepperdine color here. And I'm wearing it to show to you that we are all one. There is no difference. Somehow we happen to be given different upbringing, different values, different heritage, different looks by where we are born. How many of us had a choice? I want to be born in a Sikh family. I want to be born in a Christian family. I want to look white. I want to look brown. Sorry, golden rustic brown. I want to look black. How many of us had that choice? And if not, my understanding, coming back to the word understanding, is the following. And that's why I love teaching and working in cross-cultural dispute resolution, communication, understanding. If we didn't have that choice, then let's be proud, but let's not be complacent. Let's be accepting of other cultures, but let's not be isolated. Let's understand people have different stories and accept that they have a right to have their story, and it's perfectly fine. And that's the understanding that brought to me where I am today. I'm just so blessed to belong to Strauss Institute at Pepperdine Caruso Law, to have leaders like Dean Caron and others who are so supportive, to have colleagues like Shelley Vons and others at the Institute who are just amazing to work with day to day, to have chaplains like Sara Barton and her amazing husband who have invited us to their homes, the first people to come and give us a gift when we moved on campus. I don't even know how they realized. 20 minutes, we just put our bag in and they were at the door knocking and saying, we got you some. And that invites you, that opens you up, and that creates a new understanding. And the new understanding is, I can live in a Church of Christ campus and I'll be loved. We'll be welcomed with open arms, open hearts. And if there is one or two people who look at me differently, that's okay. Have the understanding. It may not be their fault. Majority people are beautiful and they're gonna think you're beautiful. I mean, dashing, of course, another word for me. So let me conclude now, finally. Think of few friends, not too many, few friends who uplift you. Think of your parents, if you were as fortunate as I am to have them, who took care of them. Never forget to talk to your mom differently than your father. Your mother is the one who is key. In our culture, it is said she is key to keeping a family together. And I can today understand why, having lived decades now. Last thing, love your faith. My faith, which I say for the conclusion, Sikh faith has taught me so much. It has taught me forgiveness, taught me that many faiths can coexist, taught me that it is okay to stand out because it puts more responsibility on you. It taught me that at times days will be difficult, but precisely because they're difficult, you'll improve. You'll push yourself harder the next day. It taught me to share. Sharing is one of the key components. Sharing your stories, sharing your money, sharing anything that you have that you could share. I am blessed that I belong to this faith, that I happen to have the wisdom to belong to a faith, and that I had a chance to belong to a family that supported me whenever I was down, friends who uplifted me when I was deeply in trouble. And of course, so blessed to wear what I'm wearing today in a community that has accepted me so well. I'm happy to take any questions that you have, but thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Sukhsimran. I just want, on behalf of the group, I just want to affirm what you have shared. I know many of us who have heard what you said are just feeling that. And I want to affirm all of those who came and received your story and the way that it will work in their lives, even beyond this time. We won't take time for every person to verbally express one-on-one their appreciation. You can feel free to email Sukhsimran, or you can put it in the chat. I see a few people have already done that, and I thank you for that. But I do, I want to open up, I want to invite questions. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat, or if you really want to ask it, you can raise your hand and I'll try to notice and call on you. And so I'm going to ask the first question while people are getting those together. I listened to your TED Talks this morning, and I noticed that you mentioned the role of collectivist culture in your life. And I'm curious, what role did that play positively and or negatively in you, especially overcoming your stutter, is what I'm wondering. How, what was that like for you?
It's a beautiful question and something I did not tackle. So I'm glad you asked that, Sarah. Actually, if you all pay attention for a minute, this is such a deep question. There is a blessing and a privilege to be born in a collectivist society. Collectivist society teaches you to compromise so well. It teaches you to listen and let go of that ego. It teaches you to have less self-centered worldview of, so. But that is one story, right? It comes with issues, and the issues are, it sometimes overpowers you. It sometimes doesn't let you speak. It silences you, and silences minorities and women more than, if you're not a woman or a minority. So there is both sides to it. The question is which side you grew up in and what gave you more chance to speak or to grow up or to express yourself. So I actually think collectivism was one of the reasons why I faced the impediment that I did, because of so much power differential whenever I wanted to speak. So for example, I had a astrologer come to my home once, and I remember maybe I was 14, 15, and a good friend of our family, and he started reading everyone's hand, and he read my hand. Now I don't believe in all of that, so I want to be very clear. Please don't get upset with my comments that are going to come up right now. And he read my hand, and I asked him one question. I was 14 years old. I said, Mr. X, I said, you know about Hiroshima, Nagasaki? Yeah. And you know World War II? You know World War I? He said, yeah. You know how many people died in an instant? He said, yeah. Wait. Do you think they all had the same hand? Because as per your reading of my lifeline, you're telling me that I'm going to die in a certain time. But do you think all of them had the same hand? He got a little mad, and he said, your kid needs to be, whatever. So the question here is this, and my dad gave me a long lecture. Don't do that again. And that shuts you down. Sometimes that suffocates you at times, right? Now, please edit this part out of this video before I show it to my dad. Just the request. Now, the thing about individualism that you all may or may not appreciate is how amazing it is. Two qualities that America has that we don't look into ourselves. Of course, we look into negative and we want to change that. That's wonderful. Two qualities American culture has. One, we are very good in accepting what we are not good at. You ask a direction to someone on Highway 5 in Malibu, anywhere, people will tell you, I'm sorry, I don't know. You may not realize that around the world, that trait is missing. People will cook up whole thing for you, but they won't say, I don't know. And in America, we say, I don't know. Number two, the best part of America is the teachers. They build you up. And when I say teachers, service people, nurses, doctors, there's a work ethic here that is so beautiful. That work ethic is that one reason why it attracts immigrants besides other reasons. So let me combine them both. When I came here, one of my professors was Bob Bailey, who still is one of the deans at University of Missouri. And Professor Bailey let me speak in his class, and I stuttered throughout the presentation, but I volunteered. I went there, I did the presentation of a case study. And he called me afterwards to his office. He said, I want to meet you. I'm like, uh-oh, there you go. Same thing again. Somebody's going to tell me you're done. Go back. He did something that never happened to me before. He said, I loved your presentation. And I was like, me? He said, yes, I loved your presentation. Everything you did was great. Okay. And I'm trying to figure this out. And you were animated. Now that day, I had no idea what animated means. So I went back to my dorm, looked up the dictionary. Animated means something positive. So I was glad. And I came. So next day I met him again in the corridor. I said, Professor, anything I should change? He said, nope. In fact, I want you to do another presentation in 2 weeks. I saw the same when I went to Minnesota, and a Jewish professor, Jim Coben, when he pushed me to teach. This was 2006. I was teaching my first cross-cultural class. And he said, I don't think there's anybody else who can teach better than you, Sukhsimran. Go ahead and teach. I said, Jim, are you going to come in and watch me? He said, nope. You got this. To Susan Hammer, who we lost recently as an international mediator, who brought me to International Academy of Mediators. And when she announced me on a stage here in Santa Monica 7 or 8 years ago, she did the same thing. Men, women, 2 Jewish men, a Christian woman, and others. And I can tell you, none of them belong to my faith. None of them looked like me, but they helped me. They built me up one step at a time. So individualism gives you that quality, gives you that work ethic, gives you that freedom to speak, and gives you that humility that some of us gain. Collectivism, on the other hand, I still like 2 things about collectivism. I'll end with this. One, I told you what I like is the compromise. The other thing I like is how we take care of our elders. There is something beautiful about it. We don't believe in putting elders in elder care facilities. Now, elders may want to go into elder care facility, that's a different thing, but we don't believe in it. And that's part of the value I want to keep with me.
Thank you for sharing that. I really got a lot out of just your reflections on that and appreciate it. I do have a private message that Dean Caron would like to say something. So Paul, go ahead and unmute yourself and have at it.
Thanks, Sarah. Sukhsimran and I share one of the 2 attributes he spoke about. I don't wear a turban, so I stutter as well. And I'd like to share a story about how Sukhsimran encouraged me when my wife and some friends encouraged me to run for dean, even though I speak the way that I do. And so I threw my hat in the ring, and as part of that sort of circuit, you have to give a whole bunch of speeches. And one of those is you have to give a speech to the faculty. And so Sukhsimran had just been hired, and I'm not sure if we had ever sort of spoken before that day. So I go in the room to give my speech, and of course, because of how I speak, I'm very nervous. And I look up, and Andy Benton's in the room. And he didn't come to the other sort of candidates when they gave their sort of talks. And so I knew exactly why he was there. So I did my speech and had some Q&A with the faculty. And I ended that by telling the faculty that there's a host of reasons why they may decide to hire me as dean, but one of them should not be how I talk, because how I talk has made me who I am. And so when I was done, Sukhsimran came up to me and shared his story and how he was so grateful and supportive of me trying to be dean. And I found in my life that God kind of brings the right folks in your life at the right time. And so that moment meant the world to me. And I felt encouraged by Sukhsimran that day. And the other 4 deans turned down the job and I became dean. So it's all worked out great. So thank you, Sukhsimran.
I mean, I had one thing, they did not turn down the job, folks. Dean Caron, it was the best, is the best. And thank you for sharing that, sir. And I salute you for everything you do. And you can see he is one of the most hardworking men I know, literally. And he won't give up on us. And thank you for your leadership.
Yeah. Well, I have a question that came in, and you will this is a big question, so take this however you want to go, but I'm intrigued by it. I think it's really interesting. The question is, do you think America has changed in the time you've been here, and how? And do you have any concerns about the future of this country?
Wow. All right. I'll try. I'll make an attempt, my friends. This is a difficult question. Yes, it has changed. When I came only 3 years after 9/11, it was a different atmosphere. Remember, we are still a country in many ways, which are very open to many cultures around the world. Yes, we go through a lot of struggle. 1920s and 30s, people from my descent did not get citizenships and everything till one of the Sikh gentlemen fought for it. And you can look at the Japanese struggle, the Korean struggle. We had all the struggles we all know of. But overall, generally speaking, if I make a general comment, that is, we are still one of the countries where if your child is born, it may change. If child is born in this country, the child becomes a citizen. Now, you may be surprised, not around the world, many countries do that. Actually, in India, there are stricter rules in terms of practice of law and how you get citizenship in circumstances versus in America, which I think a difference of developing and developed nation. So that one comment taken, what I've seen is people has become more acceptance oriented overall. Until lately, a couple of years or 3 years, we have been really getting back into the division war. And we are away from 9/11, thankfully, close to 20 years away. And that brought understanding in people, right? People are, but the new division, it really troubles me. So I don't know the answer to the question, but I want to tell you one thing. If there's anything that keeps me up at night, it is the question, why are we still not understanding each other? What can we go deeply into having the difficult dialogues? What is it about red and blue? Because people like me who chose to come to this country, that means we left a lot back home, have such high hopes. And for us, it's a dreamland, and we have such high aspirations. And when we see the presidential debate, where we just see, it is deeply hurting, right? And on both sides, right? And for me, so the America I see is the America of idealism that leads the world, that wants to be powerful, that wants to be going back to those ideals and values that people around the world aspire us to be. In fact, I love to read international news just to see the perspective of the world on America right now. And there's a French philosopher that I want to quickly tell you about, and I'll give you his full name, and I can't even pronounce his last name, but he is one of the most famous philosophers on writing about American idealism and American future. And he said, so more than me, what he says is something amazing. He says, COVID-19, the race relations of 2020, whatever we are going through, America is going to bounce back. He said, I don't know any people on earth that are more resilient, more creative, and self-challenging at times than Americans. And in short answer that I have, I totally believe in him. There's a reason I live here. Which other culture, a turbaned man with a beard, not too old in life, and of course, and will be accepted into a Church of Christ place and given a home in the place and accepted as a brother and as a son and as a teacher? I don't know many countries. There are so many barriers. There's an age barrier. There's a religion barrier. And I'm just giving, sorry, I just got to go back to my story, but I'm giving you a personal example. But we have to stop and say and think and say, wow, this is America. And let's not forget, we were one of the first nations to get an African-American president, one of the first in the world. Let's not forget that, right? Let's not forget that. Let's not forget the best of us. There's a lot there that this country has done, written, produced. Last thing I'll mention, look at education. People around the world want to come to America because of education. The top 50 universities in the world, majority of them are here in the US. We are 46, by the way. We're right there. All right, back to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, I loved it when you mentioned the Church of Christ in your TED Talk in India. So thanks for that. We got a little shout out in India. So thank you for that. And so positively. You are always so positive. Thank you. Kate has a question, and Kate, I'm kind of calling on you to ask if you want to ask it yourself. I can read it if you want, but I like the personal nature of your question. So go ahead if you'd like to ask it.
Sure.
Hi, Sukhsimran. I'm Kate Suriyatip, and I wrote in the chat here, but I'm just curious. First of all, I just love your name, and it reminds me there's a we call it in Thailand, we call it an umpo, which is like a district named Sukhsimran, spelled differently. But my question is, with your name, is it similar to the translation in Thai, where the word Sukh in Thai means like happiness and joy, and then Samran means like pleasure and fun and enjoyment. And so I'm just curious if there's shared meaning between.
Yeah, wow. I had not anticipated that. I've been teaching cross-cultural communication for about 18 years. I haven't had that comment before. So thank you. I did not know that. And the answer is yes, absolutely. Sukh means happiness or prosperity or contentment. And Simran means remembering someone is above you always, so staying humble. And Jeet means win. So I've given a formula in life: stay happy and stay humble, and you will win. I guess that's the formula. And the last name Singh belongs to most, if not all, Sikh men. To eradicate caste system, we were all given a same surname. Not create some issues, because my phone book is full of Singhs. That's why I emphasize more on first names. But all women are Kaurs, K-A-U-R, which means princess. All men are Singhs, just to eradicate the caste system and all. So very good question. Last thing I'll mention, since this question is raised, folks, to many people, name is a big deal. They have lived on their names. So I appreciate everyone trying to say Sukhsimran, and that's so nice of you, because when you cut short a people's name, that's an American way in some ways. You may not realize you may be cutting short who they think they are. So you're killing their identity in some ways, piece by piece. So please pay attention to names. So I appreciate your question, Kate, for sure. And try to, but it's okay. Don't worry. If you make a mistake, just say, hey. And that's the best thing of America too. Hey, I'm an American. I can't say your name. Just say that. Start. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Yeah, my legal name is actually Kesapon. So a little bit of Sanskrit in there, but I
Beautiful.
got anglicized to Kate. But yeah, I'm with you.
Thank you for sharing it. Thank you. Folks, I'm very open to any questions, any comments anybody has. I'm very happy to answer anything. So please do.
We actually have time, I think, for one more. There's one we could visit in the chat, but it covers a lot of the themes. We just heard about humility and individualism and collectivism, but we could go back to that topic, or I'll just open it for a second and see if anyone has another burning question you'd like to ask. You can just unmute yourself and ask if you'd like to. I will tell you, speaking about your name and how many people have your last name, I followed like 3 people on Twitter I thought were you before I finally found you. So it took a while.
Yes.
Okay, anyone else have a question? I'm watching.
I see some of my students here. So nice to show you. Thank you for being.
So I see several law school students.
And they're not bored. That's amazing.
I know, isn't it great?
That's amazing. I want to make one last comment, maybe if till you think of a question, folks, or if there is a comment. And that is, let's not forget one more thing. The strength of our nation, since that question was asked earlier, is in the diversity this nation has. There are not many nations where people look so diverse and be together and openly have conversation free without being monitored, to have a conversation like this one. And that's a privilege, because in many countries that privilege is being taken away, very highly sanctioned. I mean, you will miss Gmail the moment you land in Beijing. You won't realize how important Gmail or Google is. And then you say, why can't I open my Gmail? And I'll stop with that light example, but it can go a lot serious soon. And that is a beautiful thing, that we can have this intellectual conversation without having to worry about somebody looking over. On that high note, Sarah, back to you.
I think that's a wonderful last word. We are just coming up to the end of this, and I want to honor everyone's time. I just want to reflect on, I love everything. I've heard parts of your story at different times, and of course, all of us are multifaceted. So it's been interesting to hear the facets. I had no idea that you stuttered before we started this conversation about what you would talk about today, and we've had lots of conversations. So I appreciate you sharing that. and just reminding everyone that we believe that the vulnerability it takes to share, that's what Chris and I really want this to be. It requires vulnerability for someone to tell their story, even one facet of their story, and yet it's that vulnerability that is bringing us hope and joy in a time where some things are hard. So I hope you will find that today. Reach out to Sukhsimran, you know where to find him now. And thank you all for being here. Have a really great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.